didn't take him long to convince me that, handicapped though he was better than any substitute I could use, if only he hadn't had that withered arm. That night he came around to see me again. "Coach," he said, "there must be some way to fix my arm." I thought hard. I've always been handy at repairing injured players, and finally hit on a scheme. I dug up 2 strips of leather. These I sewed around his bad wrist, extending from the tips of his finger to his elbow. We stuffed the inside with cotton and bound the hole in tape. It seemed to offer adequate protection. "Lubo, it looks like you were going to get into that game," I said. He just stood there smiling and saying over and over, "Thank you, Coach, thank you." I don't mind telling you I felt pretty weepy. Of course, Lubo couldn't play end or tackle. I decided to switch Beaver, the right guard, who had done some playing at end, to Exendine's old position, and use Lubo in his place. News of this decision soon got me into trouble. All the cripples around the place asked for harness that would enable them to play. But the biggest shock I got came when Wheelock showed up at my house. He had been in the infirmary 3 weeks, but in the last few days had been allowed out in the air a bit. He was still in such pain he couldn't bear to have anyone lay a hand on him. "Now look here, Coach," he said, "if you can fix Lubo, you can fix me. There's nothing wrong with my arms or legs. All I've got is pleurisy." I didn't argue with him. Arguments didn't seem to count much with those Indians. We went up to the engineering school and asked for help. Someone dug up 2 wide sheets of aluminum, resembling, as I said before, the metal portion of a washboard. "That's the stuff," said Wheelock. "First I'll put on a heavy shirt, then you can fix those on me, one in front and one in back. Bind them with tape so they won't slip. Put my jersey on overall and I'll be absolutely all right." There was left but one vacancy on the team. That was center. Fortunately, this would be the one position where Wheelock would suffer a minimum of pain, although he was bound to have plenty of it no matter where he was placed. I assigned him to it. In the interview, Warner discussed some strategy in the events of the game's first half that put Cornell ahead 6-5. And now we continue with his narration. The second half got underway with Cornell rushing us off our feet, and yet, just when it seemed that she was about to score, an Indian would appear from nowhere and throw the man carrying the ball for a loss on 3rd down. Mostly it was Lubo and Wheelock. How Lubo did it with his lame arm, I don't know. And time after time, Wheelock winced in pain as he came in contact with his opponents. But always they are in the job, diving over or under interference and bringing down the man with the ball. Williams backed up both. Johnson was wonderful in running back punts. The lame Exendine at tackle more than held his own. Well into the second half, we got a break which repaid our cripples for their devotion to the team. Williams, standing on Carlisle's 30-yard line, delivered the best punt of the day. It was a wonderful kick that carried the ball a full 50 yards before it touched on Cornell's 30-yard line. Brewster, the Cornell quarter, apparently figured that the ball would roll clear to the line. He decided to let it pass so it could be brought out again on the 20-yard line. But after one high bound, the ball took a backward instead of a forward leap and struck the leg of Tiedemann, right end, who had run back to give Brewster interference. This made a free ball of it, and Bradley, Carlisle's right end, who had charged down the field, grabbed it. It was Carlisle's ball on Cornell's 13-yard line, and quarterback Johnson immediately proceeded with the most brilliant strategy of the game. This consisted in using the same formation with variations 4 times in succession. Warner goes on to describe an earlier incarnation of a single wingback formation, which was designed to protect his crippled players. Johnson's brilliant strategy used fakes, deception, and speed to confuse the defense as to where the ball was going and who was carrying it. On the 4th play of the series, Williams dove over the middle of the line for the go-ahead touchdown. Now we return to Warner's narrative. Lubo was able to continue after this play, but Wheelock's outraged body could endure no more. He fell in an agony of pain and had to be taken from the field. This necessitated the only substitution of the game. We missed the goal after touchdown, and the score was Carlisle 10, Cornell 6. But the game was won. Williams played center on defense, and we held the Ithacans until the whistle blew. Was Lubo happy? Was he? And that reminds me, after the game that night, I talked again with Bill and my brother. How did Lubo impress you, Bill? I asked. Say, Glenn, was that fellow in uniform when I was down at Carlisle? No, he's the one who followed you around with his arm in a sling, watching you at practice. Well, if that fellow can play like that when he's crippled, replied Bill, I'd hate to tackle him when he's in good condition. In view of the fact that Bill was placed on the All-American that year by Walter Camp and all the other critics, his performance in the Carlisle game being praised particularly, I consider he paid Lubo a fine tribute. But the boy deserved everything good that could be said about him. And Wheelock too. The strategy by which Johnson won the game was fine, but never so wonderful as the splendid feat of those two boys in playing that day. When you get down to facts, it was their devotion to their school and their team that beat Cornell. There's a lesson in it for every lad that aspires to play the game.